Conor O'Neill here from Everyday Athlete, where we work with everyday athletes who want to pursue their athletic goals in endurance running, strength training, physique change, and sport. In this podcast, my guests and I discuss principles, strategies, and stories that may help you in pursuit of your own athletic goals and in your life outside of that too. When we first met back in uni, so probably 10 plus years ago now, and ended up living together obviously a few years after that, final year, and I think it's fair to say we probably had what most people would say would be different personalities in certain ways, in mostly the extroversion versus introversion realm, where obviously you enjoyed more so the going out socialising side of things, and maybe I was a little bit more introverted, sitting in coffee shops journaling and reading books. Not that you didn't have that aspect as well, and I didn't maybe have the other aspect, but I think on the scale of introvert extrovert, I think the difference is quite clear. But we had very much in common, I think, the aspect of being focused on business and self-development even back then, and probably more so the self-development because we didn't have businesses, but we were interested in that side of things, listening to a lot of Gary Vee, Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, those type of guys. And I wonder now at this point, when you think back to then, what aspects of that have carried over to now versus what aspects you've purposely or otherwise left behind.
I think it's interesting for those that probably don't know Conor and myself, through bad luck, good luck, misfortune or fate, whatever you want to call it, ended up living together. We're supposed to be in a house with two houses with fellas that we knew individually. We were probably in a similar friend group, and ended up being in a two-man house and not really knowing each other. As you alluded to, I probably was at the stage where I was a wee bit more enjoying the socialising and the going out drinking and partying, and you obviously don't drink, and were never really a man for the going out and partying. So it made for some interesting moments. I think you coming into the living room and kitchen one morning, and there was chicken nuggets and chips scattered across the entire room of the flat. In terms of like what has been the same, I think you alluded to there that we were both kind of very interested in the idea of self-development and potentially having a business down the line. We neither of us had really any clue what that would be, just that we had the idea that why would you work for somebody else when you could control your own time, where your rewards would be relative or proportional to the effort that you put in. If you could do it better, then you would be rewarded accordingly, and you could have the freedom to do things yourself. And we had different people, both locally and virtually, like online, that we looked up to, admired to. I know we both would have had different people, Elliot Hulse, Christian Guzman, in terms of the online sphere. I would have actually done a little bit of work with Black Box, which was EFP Gyms at the time. Gregory Bradley was running it, and he sort of, not that he had he provided me a blueprint, but it just sort of showed me that, okay, this isn't just for people who are famous online. Like, you can have a business. It's like if you just like double down and decide what you're going to do and do it to the best of your ability. In terms of what's changed, I think I'm maybe hopefully a little less naive in terms of what it takes to grow the business 10 years later. I don't think I'm at the point where I thought I would be. I think we maybe had misconceptions about, we were like, yeah, it's going to take a long time, like maybe 2 years, like for us to build a huge business. But I definitely still have that thing that we both talk about. We're interested in the conversations around business, around trying to get better, around that little bit of introspection to see what things are working, what things are not, what can I do better, because we're both interested in moving ourselves forward, however we define moving forward. Sometimes it's to reclaim some freedom in our lifestyle. Sometimes it's to push the business on from a profit or financial standpoint. Sometimes it's from our own physicality, whether it's your pursuit of running or my own pursuit of BJJ. Like, a lot of those kind of principles remain the same. In terms of things that are not maybe the same, I actually redone my Understand Myself personality test, and it had been probably 7 or 8 years before I done it, and I remember being incredibly high on extroversion, and the most recent time I done it about 2 months ago, it was significantly lower. Now, I don't know how much those things change time to time. I do feel that way myself, in that I'm probably not as... I probably don't get as much of my energy around from groups. I probably value my own time a little bit more and being on my own to do certain things. And that's one of the biggest things that sticks out that has changed since that time, in that I'm probably maybe, and I don't know, you might be able to speak to the actual technical way this works, and this could be completely wrong, but I know I personally feel like my personality has changed over the last 10 years, and I feel a lot more introverted relatively, still not to your stage of introversion, but that's the thing that jumps out in my mind as the thing that has changed most significantly.
Interesting. Yeah, with personality traits, they generally don't change much, but they can certainly change on a relative scale. They don't. You probably will remain extroverted, I'm sure, compared to most people, but compared to where you were previously, you can obviously change those things. And I would say I've probably seen that in you as well. For a lot of that maybe potentially coming from not wanting to be out as much as a result of having already found what you were looking for on potential nights out in terms of partners, etc.
Yep.
That's one aspect of it, I'm sure. But even just on a general social standpoint, I would say probably you've become probably more interested in doing things that are more, whilst the interest was always there in self-development, I would say a lot of your actions now are more self-development orientated in terms of what you're doing, especially with the likes of the BJJ. Obviously it's with other people, which is probably at this point your main social outlet on a consistent basis, but most of what you're doing is probably spent alone time now with work and the way the work is. But also what you touched on was naivety there from those days, and having a bit of naivety of what it would take to build a business, get to where you are today, and I think there's value in that, the naivety of not knowing how long and how hard it's going to be. I spoke with Dan Reeve last week, and he talked about the naivety needed to pursue these big endurance events. And he says he was saying the same thing. If you knew what it was going to be like, if you knew how much suffering there was going to be, you probably wouldn't do it. But you almost allow yourself that little bit of naivety to get you started and to take the steps, and after that you just follow the process until it's accomplished. But I was also wondering about, if you take yourself back to those times and the potential paths that you could have taken, one of which obviously led to you opening the gym, moving away from that into the online program side of things, and now to where you are today, with that being by all means a successful business and something that you enjoy and are passionate about. But I'm also aware of the other potential paths that you could have taken, whether that be within the engineering, whether that be within the work you were doing with, as you mentioned, Gregory, within that being other areas outside of that. And I'm curious, do you ever think about those other potential paths, and out of those ones that you would have liked to have pursued, and then obviously ones that you are glad you didn't pursue?
I suppose we both were under no illusions from the time where We were in both on placement years, and the reality of working in the industry that we were becoming qualified in was kind of hit us like a ton of bricks, in that we both realised that it wasn't really what we wanted to do, how we wanted to spend our time. Again, the naivety was that thing of like, we can absolutely do this. Like, sure, these people are doing it. Like, we're so much smarter than these people, and like with absolutely no no evidence to suggest that was the case. It was more just a matter of like, and that was enough to get us kind of moving in the right direction. In terms of, I knew from my probably a few months into my placement year that I knew I did not want to do this, and I have never had a moment where I questioned, I wonder how I would have got on if I had pursued the engineering, or I wonder like what would I be doing now if I pursued that. There has never been a moment where I've thought of that, because I knew so wholeheartedly in the moment that it just wasn't for me. So it was one of those things where I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I 110% did not want this, and it kind of allowed me to go through some trial and error to land on the things that we did want to do, and we both played around with different paths. I was tutoring maths and science during those first year or two, as we're trying to find out what to do. Both of you were doing some art and running the art business. I started a blog. We both were working in a cafe at the same time, and really, I don't know, was it delusions of grandeur? Like, or maybe a little bit sort of looking and going, oh my God, like we can do this. Like, this is like embracing the grind, or whatever it is. Other than the engineering, I feel like everything's took quite a sort of logical one step to the next. And each decision that I made at the time, I didn't really have any regrets. I didn't really have any sort of second guessing. That's probably not in my nature. You're a lot more introspective than me. And I think that would probably one of the things that you would want to make sure that you've dug into the details. And I'm a little bit more, I'll dive in, I'll work out if it's deep enough once I land in the water, much to my error a lot of the time. But even the progression for me, from coaching people one-to-one, personal training in a small studio, building, like transitioning to a larger gym, investing and trying to get that set up, building that up to like 150 members before COVID, that being essentially decimated during COVID, and starting the online and kind of getting it going around the same sort of time frame, just as COVID was kind of in full swing. And it's all felt very natural. There hasn't been a point where I was like, I wonder would I do this or would I do this instead. Like, the online probably at the moment seems like the best iteration, the current iteration of what I would like to do, how I would like to spend my time, and it seems like that is it for me. It has such a balance. I have no doubt that as the years progress, and this is something we talk about, that the next stage of our journey, be it in business or whatever, it'll most likely be an iteration of something we're already doing. It won't be a hard left or a complete sort of perpendicular turn into a different industry. It will most likely be the next iteration of a certain thing. I know you talk quite a lot about that in terms of how your own business has gradually like changed from one evolution to the next, from GAA and nutrition specific to GAA nutrition training specific, and then to a little bit more general nutrition specific, just for people who want to develop themselves physically and have that growth mindset. And now a huge aspect of what you do is in actually getting involved, like building out a more robust system around that involves the psychological side of it. So it seems like from the outside looking in at your stuff, everything has been just the next iteration, the next revision of the existing business. And that's kind of, I suppose, because you've explained this to me multiple times, that's kind of how the lens through which I view my own business and how I've done things now. So I don't feel like I have anything that I'm like, I wonder would I do that or would I do this. It just feels like this natural evolution of the thing that I'm doing. But I'm interested on your side. Like, I know some people might be following you now that have followed you for the last 6 years and have seen an insight to all of that. But some people are also may have only came across you in the last 6 months. So I think people maybe would be interested in hearing your evolution of the business from know yourself nutrition right through to now for those that aren't aware.
Yeah, it's pretty, at the simple level, it's what you've said there. But even before that, I suppose there was the aspect that you also mentioned about the art business and, you know, doing portraits and paintings, and I had that aspect before that, and probably didn't have the experience or knowledge to properly turn that into a business where I was basically charging £50 for this piece of art that would have taken me 10 to 20 hours, and you know, obviously it being skilled labor shouldn't be charged at less than minimum wage, but didn't understand the idea that how you would multiply that out over a course of a month, and how that turns into X amount of profit. How does that compare to what a full-time job would be? How does that compare to what expenses, living expenses I would be having down the line? How then would you turn that into more scalability? And I think from that I ended up probably not making enough money to be able to, or not even seeing a way of making enough money to be able to see that as a full-time business. Whereas as I was then coming towards the end of uni and looking at all those different business options and career paths, and again not wanting to go the engineering route, probably looking at things that I was most interested in my own life, the things that I was spending money on, the programs that I was investing in, and all of that led me to say, well, this is very clear that I have an interest, I have knowledge, I have experience in the performance and physical performance realm, and most specifically, as you mentioned, the nutritional element at that stage. And given the background of me having played GAA, I decided then, well, going the route of helping GAA players with their nutrition was the option that I would go with, because it was something that I was already spending a huge chunk of my time reading about, listening to people about, even just, you know, putting plans together for myself. And it was something that was not out there at the time, at least much, and at least done well. But decided to go down that route. As time then progressed, I integrated more of the training element into it because of the interest that I also had in that realm, and the fact that the people who were coming to me were also looking for that, along with the nutrition. And then that inevitably for me led to the more what you might call mindset / performance psychology side of things, and integrating all those things became, as you said, a natural path to integrating all those things into the business. But I think for me, the leaving behind that more creative aspect with the art and with other elements of design that I would have played about with before that, to be honest, has probably always been something that I wonder about, and wonder, is that something I can integrate again down the line? Is that something that I should be trying to in some way bring into the current business? Is that something that I should be exploring on the side? And that's been something that over the years I've thought about. But I think more so now I've taken a similar mindset to what you mentioned, which is more forgetting about the regrets of things that you didn't do, and taking things as just being the natural path that it should have been taken, and knowing that as well, which was a big realization for me probably in the last couple of years, which was you don't have to do everything at once. You can do everything, but you can't do everything at once, meaning if I want to 5 to 10 years from now explore that artistic side, or that creative side, and you know, go and be an artist or an architect or something along those lines, there's no reason I can't decide to do that down the line. Or even if it's now pursuing the more psychology side of things, and down the line 5 to 10 years going specifically into the psychology side of things, it's all there, and it's all options that you can take. And maybe having gone down this route and having seen some success in the current place that I'm in, it potentially leaves you with it can have the potential to leave you with a little bit more of a fixed mindset towards the options that are out there, even though you chose the business that wasn't the obvious option, or the route that wasn't the obvious career option. But now you've had some success with it, and can forget that actually you can change paths again at any time if you really wanted to. Do you think going forward from here, because I know that when you're talking about where you were there and not having regrets about not taking other career paths or not having any thought really about it, going forward from here, do you take that same mindset towards the paths you could take from here? As in, do you think about different paths you could go? Do you just think about taking what you're doing now and pursuing it for another 6 months, year, and then doing the same, reevaluating at that point? Is that how you think about it now?
I think we actually had a conversation. For those that don't know, Connor and myself have a call. It's pretty much been every week in the last 6 months. We've probably slacked a little bit, but it was called Accountability Club. And we basically have a call, a Zoom, or if we're in the same country, we sit 6 years now, yeah. So we sit down, have a coffee, and it's probably been the most important thing that we ever decided to do. We initially used it as an accountability framework. That was why it was called Accountability Club. But we soon realised that wasn't actually the benefit. The benefit was just the fact that we had somebody else that was going through something similar, that we had a bit of an open forum conversation with about what's working, what's not, what we're worried about, what we're excited about, and we have that like consistently, and we can always tell when our stress levels are going up. We look at the calendar and realise it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we've had one, but we were having a conversation I think a couple of weeks ago on our Accountability Club call, and I think I spoke about this where you'd asked a similar question in terms of like what thoughts have you given to what the next stage looks like, or how happy are you to be doing what you're doing now for the next 5 years. And I think my current lens, the way I'm viewing this at the moment, is I haven't got good enough at this game yet to jump ship and go to another game or to drastically change the iteration. I think we're constantly trying to improve the actual business that we're in, but in terms of this business at the moment, I feel like there's so much I still have to learn, both from an actual delivery standpoint, both from a marketing standpoint, a sales, client retention. Like there's a lot of aspects of actually growing the business that I can look and see people that have grew significantly larger businesses with a relative equivalent standard of service to the clients. And in my view, I'm looking going, okay, well, I haven't actually grew this business. I haven't grew my own skills. I haven't learned the lessons that I need to learn in this. And I think I've said to you as well that I don't know if I'll be coaching in 5 years. I don't know. I could be, but I potentially might not be. And my way of viewing it is aside from this being the job that I currently love and the iteration that I currently love and the way I like spend my days, this is basically a training ground for skill acquisition to try and learn as many different things as I can, so that whatever that next thing is that I do decide to do, be it in 6 months, 10 years, or anywhere in between, that I'm as best placed as possible for that to go well, and I can translate and sort of transfer those skills across. So that's my, in terms of the what or the how of what that might look like. I'm incredibly unclear. I haven't spent any time looking at it. I think 99% of my available brain space has been on trying to maximize what I'm doing now, be that with content or delivery with clients or scale, whatever it is. So I haven't really took my eye off that to look like longer term. But I can always sense in the back of my mind where, okay, well, I probably know that I have this feeling that I won't be doing it in 10 years. Like, I don't know if I'll be doing it in 5 years. I don't know. It might have just iterated and changed enough in that time that I don't even consider it to be the same thing. And I actually, it's something else by that stage, and it potentially could be a lateral move, or it could just be what 10 years of iteration looks like, and 10 years of iteration between me standing in a gym with one squat rack and a couple of kettlebells personal training someone to what I'm doing now. I could have seen no path that brought me from there to here. So it might just be that next like 10 years worth of iterations and evolution to the next thing. And I think that's that's what I'm resting my hat on, because I probably don't spend enough time pondering or asking myself probably the deeper questions of like am I fulfilled, am I doing this, or like how could I get more fulfillment from my job in the moment. Like those deeper questions I get a little bit lost in the tactics, and could definitely use a little bit of time to double down on those things, just to see if there's anything useful comes out of it.
There's also value in that, though, the attitude that you take towards it, of a little bit more free flowing and letting things happen, rather than getting caught up in a lot of the longer term thinking as well. Because as you say, like, the idea of going from the gym to now online, when you started the gym, the online aspect of things wasn't as popular, or wasn't as, I suppose, viable as a business in a lot of ways. So for you to have sat down and set that goal of a 5-year plan could have restricted you to the possibilities that were actually available then 5 years down the line. So 5 years from now, who knows, we could all be training someone in artificial intelligence, holograms in their living room. You don't know what's going to be available at that time. You don't know how your career is going to develop, and there's definitely value in just allowing things to happen, or having those shorter term goals, both in terms of looking at it from a bottom up perspective of the baseline of, am I doing what I'm passionate about, what I'm good at, and letting things just develop from there, and consistently reiterating, versus the top down approach of setting goals and just doing what it takes to work towards that, but having faith that your pursuit of that goal and getting towards that goal is going to give you, as you mentioned, the skills and the experience and knowledge needed for that next step.
I think something that you sort of hit on there about the idea that I think you maybe remember, I went to a conference in San Francisco, which was like a fitness summit thing. John Goodman, who's like known as pretty much the godfather of online coaching, was running a seminar at it, and I took loads of notes, and it was basically almost entirely done through emails. And I thought, and this was being sold as the next best thing. This is probably 2016, maybe 2017, potentially 2016. But I came home, I was personal training at the time, and my first online client was actually your brother, Liam, previous guest, some more. And I remember coaching him and a few other people online, and the delivery of it just did not suit my coaching style at all. It was all done through emails, it was all done in written, and I kind of parked the idea of online coaching. I was like, I don't really believe that, and doubled down on the semi-private group training. So like small group personal training was like, I was like, this is it. This is the thing that to me is the best iteration now, because at the moment, based off the available information that I had, that was exactly what that's still the decision I would have made, knowing what I knew then. Until I got a coach myself online and didn't like that coach, and after about 7 months with that coach, went with another coach, and the way they delivered online coaching, I was like, this is really powerful, like this is really impactful, like this is thing. And it's Tony McAlinden. I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody who Tony is at this stage now. He's on my feed everywhere I go. But it was him that sort of said, like, you're obviously, the gym's going well, but like, you could be doing this, like you really should be doing this. And I had been on socials for a long time, posting a lot of content, but never actually really asking. And most of the people that followed me were not within a driving distance of my gym. So when I first opened coaching, I remember like us busting our balls, spending like £1,000 a month on Facebook ads for the gym to try and get X number of people into trials to convert to members, and it was so hard. And then when I launched the online at that stage, because I had a huge base of like really warm leads, that people had been following me, and I'd asked for nothing for 3 years, when I raised my hand and said, yeah, I'm launching an online coaching program if anyone wants to try it out. And I couldn't believe the speed with which it gathered momentum. But the point of me going through that was because the version of a certain thing that I looked at the first time of online coaching and tried it, I was like, that's not really the thing. So I imagine that the next thing I do will have something similar, that it's probably something that I've entertained some form of that idea before, but have made the decision against it, but for a certain reason. But once I actually land on that, it will be at a sort of a level of iteration that it's actually, this would suit me really well. This would, based off my skill set and my personality, I think this is actually be really useful for me. So I think that's just something I want to speak to. I think even some things that you potentially think as options, you just, like the slightest tweak in terms of the approach of, and I think even potentially like you with the art, it's like you have that in your head. It's probably something you're going to do, but when you do it, at whatever stage that is, there's probably going to be a slight twist or difference to how you set it up, to how you're viewing it now. And the way you're viewing it now might be, I don't really know if I have time to do it this way. But the version that you actually start doing it with in 4-10 years, whatever it is, might just be suitably like degrees of freedom different, that it's just enough that you're like, this is exactly what I need, and I just didn't know what that was at that point in time, the first time I put it aside.
Yeah, absolutely. And it speaks to that learning process as well, of what you're doing by pursuing one thing will give you the skills needed to pursue something else down the line as well, regardless of what that is. And obviously giving you the freedom in a certain way as well, whether that is, having a full-time job and having the other thing that you want to do being on the side or in the evenings, and then allowing yourself to make that jump and transition over to it, or whether it's simply doing it as a hobby, as well. But I suppose another thing that we connected on, and have connected on outside of the self-development of business, was always the training side of things, and the physical improvement. And I wonder, because obviously, as I said, we only met, just over 10 years ago, but as a young fella and even in the teen years, how did you view the sporting pursuits that you were taking part in? As in, were the things you were doing specifically for the enjoyment of it? Was it things that you were doing as a competitive endeavour and wanting to win and do well in, or was there an element of obligation attached to it?
I think my football was like GAA was always the thing that I loved more than anything, and everything. My early pursuits in the gym, the first probably from 15 through to 21, 22, everything that I'd done in the gym, like the intention was that it was to improve performance on the pitch. I probably look at some of the stuff I was doing going, that is going to have absolutely no value, but at the time the intention was there, that the gym was a vehicle to improve performance. Like that was what it was. In terms of football, you could probably plot my enjoyment of football on a graph that has sort of peaked around 16, maybe 16, and had a bit of a gradual drop off. And there was nothing I loved more at the age of 15 or 16 than playing football. Like, it was a thing that fulfilled me more than anything else, and like I lived my weeks for how I played at the weekend and what I did, and my only aspiration was to play for Armagh. I remember my mum asking me, did I want an Armagh jersey when I was like 13 or 14. I said didn't want one. I wanted one when I got to play for Armagh. That was the next Armagh jersey that I was going to wear. It was one of those things that became just a fixating point for me, and probably talent wise and actual sort of God-given skill was definitely not that person that was going to be a county senior. It was never me, but it was always like that was the drive of, like, that was the motivator in me, that I was obsessed with that. Never actually got that Armagh jersey. Got very close one day and got injured in an Armagh minor training session and missed out on the kit the next week. So I still haven't actually. I actually bought an Armagh retro jersey about 1.5 years ago, and that's the first time I've had an Armagh jersey on since I was about 13, which is really funny. But the dream's well and truly gone now. 31, I'm definitely past that aspiration now. I think maybe 21 I was past it. But the obligation, I think, probably from around minor, that was where my enjoyment for football and the seriousness that sort of came in. It was a great driver for me to start the gym and try and improve performance. The sort of benefit of that improvement and focus kind of fell away, and what I was left with was this pressure to do everything perfectly. The enjoyment was kind of sucked out of everything that I was doing. I felt like I felt like I had to do everything. I felt like I had to play. And I remember actually I broke my shoulder blade playing for Queens in just before the Mechanic Cup, and I remember in a strange way, it was a catastrophic, awful injury. I was really excited. I was actually probably Queens football was probably the most enjoyable football I ever played because there was no pressure. It was James McAlinden was the manager, and he's probably one of the most the best coach I've played from an enjoyment standpoint, in that he got lads actually enjoying their football and just playing, not playing within themselves, playing to express themselves. And it was probably the time I enjoyed football as much as I had in my life. But that was the point where I got the injury, and I remember being relieved to a degree when the doctor said that like this is it, you're not, I recommend, you're not playing anymore, you've broke your shoulder blade, this is not an injury you come back from. And I remember being relieved, being like, I have an excuse now, I don't have to go to football, which is, for someone that football was their life for so long, it's a funny thing. But I didn't realise until I was out of it for about a year or two how much, when you're talking and lads are like, oh, I hate, if you, I always think of, when I'm talking to clients that talk about football, I don't try and discourage anyone from playing it, but I ask the question, are you enjoying it? And if you think about, every time you think positively or spoke positively or thought or negatively or spoke negatively about football and about playing, if you associated a +1 score to when you spoke or thought about it positively, and a negative or -1 score to when you didn't, I would bet my house on that 90% of lads would be in the negatives. That would be overwhelming. More of what they spoke about, thought about around football at the moment would be negative. It would be have to go to training, managers a arsehole, whatever it is. And that was kind of what I experienced with football at home. It's a different story out here. It's been a drastic swing in things, but that was always my experience, and that was kind of the trajectory that the obligation and enjoyment took over the last number of up until I was about 28 or so.
Was that the obligation side of things and the feeling of negativity towards that? Was it mostly the time constraints of training? Was it having to plan your year around it? Was it more that you weren't enjoying it but felt you still had to play? What aspect of it was that, or a combination?
It is a combination of everything. I think there is the obligation of when you're in the parish that I'm sure a lot of lads across the country could relate to. The idea that you would be fit and willing and of military age and not show up for the club is alien. It's well, why are you not playing? You're letting the parish down, you're letting your community, your tribe down, whatever it is. I know Gareth Fox talks a lot about your tribe, and a lot of the fear that a lot of young males and females feel around the GAA is the feeling of letting down or rejection from the tribe, potentially doing things wrong. The obvious thing of drinking bans getting caught in, and I've never really sat well with people telling me what to do. I think I'm fairly disagreeable, whether that's an employee, parents, coaches in general. But I never liked someone imposing their decision on me, and always had a question of why? Well, but why? So when and that's kind of the birth of that, the Fergal character. And a lot of my content is kind of the caricature of all of those sort of different managers or different moments across the years, because it was always a real frustration point for me listening to people being like, you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to book a holiday, you have to be here at this time, we're going to do video analysis night, and you have to be here, and basically being at the whim of the decisions that another adult was making. And I think the more time that went on, the more it sort of rubbed me up the wrong way. And it was never one particular thing, because even with holidays, you maybe went on holidays once a year, but as time went on, it kind of it grated against me quite a bit. It never I suppose the idea I always had was I will bust my balls, I will train hard, I will show up, and I will give the best account of myself on any individual day. But to tell me that I can't take a drink at my friend's wedding, or that I can't go for a weekend to a city break with my other half because there's a game on, it never sat right with me. At the end of the day, I always felt like this is something I do for enjoyment. This is something I do for the love of it. And I understand why you're doing it, and you have to kind of try and set rules and boundaries in place for everyone in order to move the team forward. But I don't relate, and I'm more than happy to kind of step aside. I suppose that's very easy to say. I think the only reason, and I've talked to a few clients about this when they're experiencing similar things, the fact that I went 4 years out of football was probably the thing that allowed me to feel and be a little bit more disagreeable when I came back. Because I had 4 years out of almost looking in from the outside, and always sort of vowing that, like, do you know, if I ever got the chance to play again, like, I would do it because I loved it. Like, I would only play again because I absolutely love it. I wouldn't put my body at risk. I wouldn't go through all the stress and all the hassle unless I was really enjoying it. And won, I think, my second last year. McAlinden were going really well in the championship, and I got the opportunity to work for a month in Marbella. And in years gone by, I would have went, oh, well, I can't, it's championship time. And now, like, looking back, I can't remember who we played in the championship. I can't remember anything about that particular group stage, whatever it was. But I remember that month, like, that was one of the best months ever. Myself and Sean had went over. Tony was there as well. There was a couple other people over, and I just had the best month. I worked, like, we got up and went for dips in the morning. We had, like, really, really just, like, probably the best life balance that I've ever achieved in my life, and the business grew and everything was amazing. And that wouldn't have happened if I had just had a let fear say to me, no, well, championship's on, I can't go away. And I was happy. I said to the manager, like, I don't mind if I'm dropped. I'm fully aware that I'm leaving and other people are training, and it's fine. And I came back, and it just happened to be that the other player that was in my position just happened to get injured. So as soon as I came back, I ended up back in the team. So it was unfortunate for them, fortunate for me, and we ended up getting to the championship final that year. But we we lost the championship final. It's like the thing that, like, 99% of lads playing football this year are not going to walk away with the championship medal, and it's all of the things you put on hold for a potential slice of this little moment when your team hits a bit of achievement. So I know that's a digression just in terms of, but that was probably the culmination of me getting to the point where I was like, I'm actually feel like I could take a little bit of a step back from it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense for some people to have those constraints put on them, in the sense of, if elite sport is your main thing that gives you a sense of meaning, gives you what you want from life, in the same way that maybe career, travel, freedom was and is for you. For people, some people who are like county level, say, or, you know, obviously professional is a different standard altogether because it is their job, but even at county level, I can see the value in it being taken very seriously, and there needing to be those constraints of going the extra mile and prioritising it over other things to a certain extent. But at club level, it feels like it's a lot, and it feels probably, as you say, it's adults having these demands on other adults. So if it was the case that the players were able to just stop taking orders in this way and just be okay to say, I'm going on holidays, I'll be back when I'm back, and, you know, if I'm playing, so be it. And the players to start doing that, I think, would be very quickly, not fixed, but it would be very quickly become the standard that this isn't something that we're willing to give up our lives for. And potentially that would be the way of it becoming more so something that people would enjoy, would stay at more, and would potentially even improve people's application to it, and the ability for players to stay within the teams and within the context of GAA, as opposed to it being something that is either you're all in or you're all out.
Yeah, and go on ahead.
That's what I was just gonna ask. Like, is that something that you see as most people having the attitude of this is, too much, and I feel like I'm either all in or having to be all out?
I feel like it's a conversation that I have, and I've got a sample group of clients, of lads that I talk to, whether it's playing out here in Dubai, and a good sample of lads that play football or hurling all across Ireland, and clients that I've worked with, people that I'm talking to, because a lot of my content is GAA specific, and it's kind of like almost say like satire around the GAA manager. I'm getting a lot of conversations back and forth around like, oh yeah, I've got a manager like this. So I'm getting a lot of evidence back that there are a large number of people that are experiencing the same frustrations. I think it's still kind of it's what I would describe as like muttering in the corner and kind of giving off under your breath, in that probably most lads are not willing to, they're wanting to be good teammates, and it's coming from the, like, they want to make sure they're doing everything for the team, because at the end of the day they do not want to let their friends down, their teammates down, so they want to do anything that's asked of them. I think that extends to a point of like, but okay, when do you question what is actually being asked of you, without, and not in a point of just being disagreeable for the sake of being disagreeable, and like nobody wants to have that player on the team that is just arguing every point, and making management teams' life's hell. But there needs to be a point where some things are questioned, and it's almost like if the management decides we are going to do this new thing and we're going to impose this condition on you, that when that's met with silence, the management team just obviously accepts that as okay, everyone takes it on. Whereas within the team there could be a significant percentage of people going, I'm not really happy about this, I don't really want to do this, but like I don't want to be the person to speak up in this situation. I'm just giving, like, maybe I'm just being a little bitch, like maybe I'm just kind of moaning and stuff, and nobody else has brought it up. So but I feel like in my conversations with people, they're having this conversation internally, and to my mind the likelihood is that other people on the team are probably having that conversation as well. And I get quite, this is one of the things that I do quite, obviously it's a lot of my content, I get quite animated about it, because it's something I am passionate about, because as you say, county level, it is required to bring your things to that next level of standard. And you can see, like, even if you watch a game of football from 15 years ago versus today, virtually looks like a different sport. Like the level, like from an athletic standpoint, like the shape the lads are in, the speed at which the game is played, the intensity, like the skill level, everything is just, you're like, oh my god, everything is just lifting up. And that's kind of been the case with the likes of the professionalism that's put into the sport now. I know there's been quite a lot of a hoopla about the Limerick 53-man backroom staff. Have you seen that in the? I've
just heard that
in the papers,
like a headline. I haven't read into it much.
So yeah, so essentially, like, Limerick obviously have a huge financial backing, and have a 53-man backroom team, and it's like, that's, yeah, at county level, that's kind of the way it's going. It's basically a professional sport. They just don't get paid. It's like a technicality. It's a professional sport without the players being taken care of in that way. Whatever way people fall in that debate, I don't really have a strong opinion on it in terms of it. I would just say it is a professional sport. I like whether or not you're paying players or whatever is irrelevant to me. What the people that play the sport have to do is the responsibilities of a professional athlete. That's what it is. But I think what you'd said about the idea of that being reasonable to be asked even at county level, I would even dispute that and say I think at county level it is more self-selecting, and the guys or girls that are making the right decisions, that are having self-imposed drink bans, that are pushing themselves to go the extra mile, that are going out of their own way to review their game footage, that are doing like those little small details, those little 1%ers to move themselves on, will move everything along, and those that aren't will kind of get self-selected out. And I think at that level, the expectation across the team is that that's done, but that's usually because that is a collection of players from across the county that have been used to doing this. Yes, you get the odd player that is just a God-given skill, just unbelievable, like once in a generation, and any club player that is insane, but usually most of the lads probably were good underage players, but a lot of lads have stories about playing against so-and-so that plays in the county team at minor, and they give them a good run for the money, but there's a reason that they're standing in the pubs telling the story and that fella's still on the pitch playing intercounty football. It's because that was their peak, whereas this other fella has been searching for improvements. But because it's been self-led and it's been an engaging goal for them, they've been willing to go above and beyond. And I think that's where, for me, the responsibility comes back to the individual. If you are looking to bring your own performance further and do things, then having a self-imposed drink ban, no problem at all. Deciding that you are going to put your holiday on hold yourself, no problem at all. Like, do those things because you have the information. You have the information about what is the perspective, like what is the potential reward for this, and what is the work required. And if you make the decision that, okay, well, I'm willing to do this work, I'm willing to have this amount of sacrifice for the potential at this reward, or to move myself forward by this amount, and you've made the decision, I think that's incredibly powerful. But I think when somebody actually imposes that on you, they take away the power for you to actually come to that yourself. I think they take away most of the value of you pursuing that goal when it becomes imposed on by somebody else. Like, we're both fairly growth mindset, so if we're in a team, we're going to be searching for ways to do things better. Even if it's not our main thing, we'll still want to improve, so we're going to be looking for those things. But once somebody takes that out of your hand and imposes it on you, I think it loses most of its value. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think we're probably largely in agreement in the sense of it being self-imposed being a lot better than it being proposed top-down. I think where I was coming from was more so from each individual's perspective, it being more acceptable or more appropriate for them to be making those decisions if they're at that higher level, as in if someone is a club player in, Division 3 of the county, and they're making the decisions to sacrifice their holidays and sacrifice their, evenings and nights out and everything, from that individual's point of view, to me it seems a little bit, unless it's something that they're really passionate about, it seems like it's, I don't want to say a waste of time. It seems like it's superfluous to what's required. But what I'm saying is the pursuit of excellence, and having somewhere where people who are willing to pursue excellence and dedicate themselves to missing the holidays, as you say, self-selected or not, to getting the extra gym sessions in, eating right, sleeping right, all those things. I like that there's a place where people who want to do that can pursue that and can do that. But I definitely do agree with the fact of it being self-imposed being a much better way for it to be. But there is still the aspect to think of it needing to be, because there are collective sessions, collective training sessions, collective gym sessions, collective training weekends, different things like that. There's always going to need to be probably a group element to it, just from those things. And if the team isn't setting up those things, the likelihood of individuals going out and raising funds for training weekends, or having nights where they have to be in a certain place, there's always going to be a few players who can't make it if it's self-organised, or will dispute the dates or whatever else. So I think it needs to be a certain amount of the top-down approach, but as much of it being player-led as possible is probably a better way for it to be. So yeah, I think
I wonder, is it a pipe dream, like what I'm talking about, in terms of like, is that communism for GAA players? Like, is there?
What it probably is though is individual sport versus team sport. So if you're looking at jiu-jitsu, for example, individual sport, what you're saying can absolutely apply to that, because it's about how much you put in. No one's going to be chasing you to show up to sessions. No one's going to be telling you what to eat. No one's going to be telling you to drink, to not be drinking or going out. So for that, it's going to be whoever applies themselves the most is going to be the successful person, or that combined with natural talent, etc. But for a team environment, I think probably, or for a team-based competition, a lot of it will come down to what the actual backroom, not necessarily backroom, but what the structure imposed by the team requires, and what the demands are placed on by the governing element of the team, and the culture created in that, I suppose. So I think that's probably maybe the distinction.
Yeah.
But I still think, yeah, the individuals are going to be leading, the ones who are leading it at the end of the day, and are going to be the ones who are having to put in the work, whether they're there or not. I think just one other thing that I wanted to talk about was that injury that you talked about, and the injuries that you've had over the years. Because what I've been talking about on the previous podcasts, and what I like talking about and plan on talking about more going forward, is that athlete identity. And I know you obviously mentioned that when you'd gotten that, I suppose, final injury, hopefully final injury, I don't think you've had the same injury since again, but that was that final blow to you taking it very seriously. I know you mentioned that it was almost a relief in some ways that you didn't have to have the obligation hanging over you of having to commit yourself to training, playing, all those different things. But was there an aspect of that where you felt part of your identity was now missing?
Yeah, like the short answer, yes. The long answer, I think most of us growing up, like obviously you grew up in Cross McGlen, like it was not your decision to play football. You enjoyed it and you did, but it wasn't your decision to play football. You were sort of bred into a culture where you were going to play football, and it happened to be that you really enjoyed it at a certain stage, and there was a point where that stopped sort of being the case just as much. But that's probably fairly similar to me, where I think my first word was, I don't know what it was, like doot doot, which was like the football. So I think that was literally like, I used to literally like have a little football that I would chase around the house. That was my first word. I can see my nephew's kind of the same now, in that he has an older brother, my other nephew. He had no interest in football between like 0 and 4. Whereas the younger one immediately was just running around with the ball and just kicking it around. And my mum saying like, yeah, that's exactly what you were like you just needed a ball in your hands at all times. So that was always like from like earliest possible memories and before, and I can remember I was always playing football, chasing a football. If I was with friends, I had a football in my hands. If I was out on my own, because we live in a village, I would have been booting the ball against the wall, trying to control it, or like catching. I was playing soccer or Gaelic, whatever it was. So it became this, like, this is just what I do, and like I loved it. But it became, I suppose, a little bit dominant in my personality, in that if I got good feelings about myself, like the dopamine hits or whatever it was, any sort of growth or feelings of improvement that I got in my life really usually came from that one particular area, which is good because it gave me a vehicle to kind of work on developing myself and seeing that, okay, when you put the work in, you get a little bit better. But the downside of it is, when I was that 21, 22, got the bad injury, broke my shoulder blade in half in that game, and it was basically, okay, well, like, that's gone. Like, that is not you anymore. And I would have prided myself on being a decent footballer. Like, I would have been like, yeah, would have been a good enough footballer. But that was now gone. And there is that little bit of all right, okay, well, what actually am I? Now, I was fortunate that was kind of the same time as I was also on the path for a little bit of self-development stuff, looking into starting coaching, starting the gym. So it was fortunate that kind of fell at the same time, because it gave me, I suppose, an immediate place to direct my energy and direct my focus. And I almost just lifted this athlete identity and then replaced it with this business owner, coach identity immediately. And I think that was complete luck. I think I would have struggled with it a lot more if I hadn't had some other template to drop that young sort of early 20s forming personality into. I think it gave me a mold where I could see high performers in this area the same way I would have looked at guys that were playing county and guys that I knew that were progressing on underage county setups and through senior, and coaches. Like, I knew who was doing what when I was playing football. But then when it came to running the business or being a coach, now I had all of these different idols, or all of these different kind of aspirational figures, and I could say, I could take and pick and choose what I wanted. I could invest in a coach in this, and that became my identity. And it's probably, we've had conversations around this in terms of your identity as a gym owner. as a business owner, as a coach, whatever it is, as someone on social media, how much of your personality is tied into the response that you actually get around those things. And it's probably taken me tonight for me to kind of try and remove a proportion of the value or identity that I have in that. And I remember having a conversation not too long ago with someone about a person who had a significant amount of followers, not sure the exact amount, but a significant enough that you would say, oh, that's impressive. And they got their account hacked and they went back to no followers. And it was like, oh, right, you're not that part. Like, that's interesting, because that doesn't mean your app is malfunctioned and you have to grow it again. You were a self-proclaimed influencer, and now you're not, and now you have to sort of rebuild that. Your identity has now shifted, the same way that an athlete with a career-ending injuries identity has shifted. And I think a lot of people, my strategy with this was to look at other areas and also try and be aware if I feel like I'm placing too much of my self-worth into one individual area. Like, if you are between the age of 20 and 30 and you feel like most of your identity, most of your good feelings about yourself come from football at the moment, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think it's also a precarious position to be in. You could stand, it's like paying attention to it now and a little bit of forethought to see, okay, what other areas am I happy with, do I want to improve on? That will make you a little bit more stable to when that next thing, like that injury, happens. Because if you're 28, like if you have 6 years left playing senior football, you're doing fairly decent. So like there's a life expectancy when it comes to playing at a decent level. So that was I didn't have a hugely negative experience with the losing identity, but it was always because I had this other template and mold that I could push myself into immediately and focus all of my anxiety and attention onto it.
I think that's very interesting. I'd never made that crossover as well of comparing an athlete getting injured and not being able to play to someone, well, you said obviously within the context of being popular on social media and then being just stripped away, but also, which is the case in that case as well, someone at a certain level of the career and losing that, or losing their job, or having to take a job that's not as highly paid or highly thought of. And the athlete changes, or the identity change that has to come along with that, outside of obviously the practical aspects of it. But you also mentioned there around the idea of having those different areas around which you take your good feeling, your satisfaction, your gratification from. It's very important too. If you think, it's like the stock market. If you invest in one stock, invest in Tesla or something like that, it's great sometimes, and when it's going up, your wealth's going up. If it drops down, your whole wealth's going down. Whereas what most investment advice would tell you is that you should be diversifying across a range of stocks, so that if one stock goes up, it's only having a minor effect, which is not necessarily what you want. But at the same time, if that stock comes down completely, the rest of the stocks take the average up. So it's diversifying that investment, and in the same way you could diversify your self-esteem across a range of things, so that if one thing doesn't go well, at least you have those other things acting as a bit of a buoy to keep up the average of your gratification, I suppose. It's like it could be the same as if you attach your success, your feeling of success towards a certain outcome. Say you're pursuing a goal of running, well, I'll take myself for example, taking the goal of running a certain time for a marathon, and you don't hit that time. If you are completely attached to that goal and you don't achieve it, it makes the complete experience miserable and remembered poorly. But if you also have a lot of other things going on and you are actually doing it for other reasons than just a specific outcome, it can take up your experience of it and your feeling towards it, how positive you're feeling about it, I suppose.
I think that's the balancing act of caring enough about it and putting enough of yourself into it to see the level of progression that you're happy with, but also understanding that like you can't just be one thing. And you hear of people being in long-term relationships and they're not potentially happy, but their identity is that they're this other half, like they're the other half, and they're like, anytime there's a significant change in any aspect of your life, you change careers, like you change jobs, I think what you mentioned, like where I have sort of thought about this a little bit more for us in terms of how we got out of engineering at the right time, was we had put a decent amount of work and effort and time into engineering, and it was kind of just the right amount of time in that it gave us the time to realise it wasn't what we wanted to do. But if there was more time put into it, the likelihood we would have walked away would have been that little bit lower, because now we're a little bit further down the line. We have a little bit more like sunk cost, and it's like that. I believe this is Jordan Peterson saying, it's like when you climb one mountain and you realise it's actually not what you want. It's not the peak. It's not the right path. You have to come back down that mountain and start at the bottom of a different mountain. And I think that's something that holds people back from, and maybe encourages people to stay in a situation they're not happy with, be that in a sport, in a relationship, in a job, in an industry. That idea of my identity is attached to this, and if I'm not this, then I have to start again. I have to start from scratch to kind of format what this next version of myself looks like, and that's a terrifying prospect. Like I think we both talk about this a lot of the time, that anytime we talk to people, we're giving you yesterday's lottery numbers in terms of things that we found, but like we're also had the great fortune of like multiple things happening at once, of being in a lot of each other's lectures, of being in the same friend group and accidentally getting put into the same house together, of both deciding together that we weren't really going to do engineering, of me getting an injury that seemed bad at the time but was probably the reason I actually started the gym. Like there's a host of these little things that had to have happened for us, and we can sit and say that, oh, like this is based off 10 years of experience. It's like this is what we found that has worked well, and it's like a lot of those a lot of that experience has been down to certain situations of chance, and just happened to be that we've been able to capitalize off the chance in a positive way. Like the biggest element probably is us living together and then end up forming probably the most stable business relationship in my life, in that we would talk constantly. I've had different friends, coaches, peers in different industries, but like us, and something I think we were both annoyed about it at the time when we got sort of like drawn out of a hat to live with each other, because neither of us really knew each other and we both knew everyone else in the group. And we were like, why have we've got the short straw here. We have to live with that person. I have to live with that person I don't know. And it was it's so funny now to think of that. And if I could grab myself then being like, this is probably going to be one of the best things financially that ever happens to you. So just shut up.
Yeah, likewise. It's one of those things. Chance, I suppose, is always a massive part of anything that you could achieve. But yeah, I think that as well, that old saying of what is it? Luck is when hard work meets opportunity, or something along those lines. Just that balance of both applying yourself to the things you want to do and be open to the opportunities to come along with that. So as part of the podcast, I've been doing just a few quick questions at the end to just give a little bit of a different aspect to what we've been talking about, I suppose, as well. So the first one, which I think might be an obvious answer, but if you could only do gym work, jiu-jitsu or GAA, which would you do?
BJJ would probably be it.
I thought that would be the answer. Your favorite coffee shop, regardless of location. So take the fact out of it that you're living in Dubai, but just your favorite coffee shop.
Ozone Coffee, London, and the Wharf. What do you call it? I can't remember.
Canary Wharf.
Canary Wharf. Yeah.
Nice. How much would someone have to pay you to run a marathon?
I think £50,000 as a number where I'm like, okay, you pay me that, I'll train for it. And other than that, I'm doing this mathematically based off how many hours I would have to run in preparation for this marathon. I'll take an hourly rate and then multiply it by 10 because I hate running. Right. So that would be it.
That's fair. I thought that's high, but fair based on knowing your love here.
Exactly what you would exactly what you would expect from me.
Yeah. What exercise, when you see it on the gym program, makes you want to not do that gym session?
Bulgarian split squats.
Right.
Yeah,
just hate them.
They're incredible. I program them constantly and I do them, but it takes a part of my soul every time I do them. So that's the expense that comes up. What
was a book that was the biggest game changer when you actually read
it? The Element, Ken Robinson.
Why that?
It was the book probably around the same time we were living together, and it talked about each person having an element. Essentially, the meeting point of the thing that you're very good at and the thing that you're very passionate about. And if you can find out what that is, you can and learn how to do it better, you can be paid for it, and that's what you should pursue, that meeting point of the thing that you're passionate about and that you're good at.
Nice. Favorite football player of the early 2000s?
Henrik Larsson.
Oh yeah. Nice.
Easy. I'm going GAA or
no? I was going soccer, but
were you thinking? What about GAA? You were thinking soccer. GAA. Kieran McGeeney.
Right.
Yeah, just so related to him as he didn't seem to be technically that gifted, but just seemed to get himself there.
Fair enough. Your favorite athlete of all time?
Oh, that's really. I'm really drawing a blank on this now. When I think of athlete, I'm thinking of like field and athletic stuff. But I'm trying to even Michael Jordan. Yeah, that's it. I've read his biography, read everything about him. It has probably Michael Jordan. That's who comes to mind.
My guess is this will relate to the next question, which is your favorite sports documentary. But I'm gonna say you're not allowed to say Last Dance.
Okay, if I'm not allowed to watch Last Dance, which I finished last week, I rewatched it last week, so I did for like the 5th time. Probably Pumping Iron.
Right, nice.
Big fan of Pumping Iron.
Yeah. Is there any athletic pursuit or sport that you'd like to try but haven't yet?
No. There's not. I think the only one that I ever had thought of for a long time was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That was the only one. There's nothing else that I'm like, oh, I'd love to do that. I'm quite boring in that regard. And not if
I'll put two out to you that I thought you might have said, which would be CrossFit and High Rocks.
So I don't have any desire to do either of those. The High Rocks one, I feel like that's one of those ones that comes along with like you train your balls off. You could be very good at that in a relatively short space of time. Now maybe I'm being naive with that, but I feel like with the appropriate training, with the appropriate intensity pushed, you could make a lot of headway in that. It's just not a goal that I find engaging at the moment.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realise with the High Rocks as well is that it's mostly running.
It's a lot of running. It is a lot of run, and it's a lot more running than CrossFit ever really seemed to be. Like it seems a lot more based off the running because it's a lot of 1 kilometer intervals based on and around. It's heavy engine work.
Yeah, it's like a running competition with gym exercises thrown in between.
What's your thoughts on this? Would you rather be right? So let's go. Say, I'm going to make the assumption that I'm stronger than you. So just to say that there for all the listeners. But let's say I was, and I'm not because I've seen you squat in the last way. Let's say I am, for argument's sake, 20% stronger than you, but you're evidently incredibly fitter than me from having.
I'd say you're at least 20% stronger than me. If we take my best lifts ever and your best lifts ever, I would say it could be 40-50%.
Right. So, but let's say it's like, would you rather be going into high rocks from my level of strength or from your level of fitness? Like, I know my answer, but
I would say high rocks specifically. CrossFit would be different.
Yeah.
But I would say high rocks fitness. I would be rather going in for fitness because I'm not going to be limited on any of the strength movements. Like it's you know, there's nothing there that's so heavy that strength is going to limit you. Obviously, it'd be more fatiguing the less strong you are on those things. But with something like say CrossFit, you know, a lot of the events are going to be strength based, or at least within the Olympic lifts, a lot of that's going to be limited by your strength as well. So with CrossFit, I would probably, if we both had a year to train, I would probably rather be in your position for CrossFit, but I'd probably rather be in my position for high rocks.
Yeah, that's interesting because even like I hold them both in the same category, but I've never actually thought of the difference in that CrossFit is a lot more strength specific based. Like it's a lot more based off your strength. Not saying that I like, so I'm probably more suited to it, but it's the one I'm least likely to try.
And by the way, I'm not an expert in either. You know, I haven't done either at any sort of a high level, or even, you know, coach people at a high level in either of them. But that's just my perspective on looking at the actual events of what it would be. It's an interesting debate, though. It's an interesting thing to think about, and like the skill element of it as well is very much. I think with CrossFit, there's a lot more skill. Specifically with the Olympic lifts, but also then the different
handstand variations,
gymnastic movements.
Which I think that's something we've both really talked about in the last while, where our sort of like the skill difference across different sports. And I think as the years have went on, I'm more drawn to those things that have a higher skill differential and a relatively similar like physical capacity. So like I'm more drawn to the things that are more skill based than I am to the things that are more capacity, strength, fitness, whatever. Like the example probably with BJJ is like doesn't matter how, it's like if I can wrestle. I was rolling with a black belt the other day who was probably 65 kilos soaking wet, and he just basically stole my soul for the full 5 minutes and was being very nice about it. Like he could have done so much damage to me if he wanted, but he was being quite nice and still not letting me do anything. And that kind of idea of, oh my, like the skill that somebody has to be at that stage for me to be like, okay, well, I'm 2 years into doing this, minimum 2, usually 3, maybe 4 times a week. Like how many hours has that been? And the difference in someone doing this that has this skill is so glaring. It's just fascinating to me. I think at my stage of my physical career, I'm more drawn to addressing that skill gap than I am to drastically changing anything about my like physical capacity, be that strength or fitness.
Yeah, I think like especially on the strength side of things, if you were to want to beat your all-time PBs by, if you were to add 50% to that, would take you extreme dedication and years. Whereas with the jiu-jitsu, there's so much more room for learning because you're at a more beginner stage, I suppose, of it, but also just because it's something that tends to be a lifelong pursuit as well, and there's a lot more variation, I suppose, in it as well, whereas the strength is just 3 lifts or whatever amount of lifts.
There's an interesting thing because you can train a lot longer doing, like you can do a lot more training doing jiu-jitsu than you can equivalent in the gym trying to pursue a muscle building or a strength goal. In that there are guys that I started training at the same time as that train twice a day because like they train in the morning, they train in the evening, and sometimes they'll come and drill and they'll probably drill either side of that. And in the same time frame that they've been doing for me, how much they're ahead of me is crazy. Like how technical they have got, because it's simply it's the accumulation of time, intentional practice, all of that sort of stuff. But when it's one of the most concrete things that I've seen, that correlation between time and result in terms of like time and learning, it's like the more those people that are going to it 2 times a day, when I train with them after missing them for 3 months and come back, it feels like someone that's been doing it for an extra year to me, because that's probably how many extra sessions they've accumulated versus that I have in that time frame, which is just a scary prospect. And I think it's a rabbit hole you can get down, because there was probably a stage for when I moved here for the first 6 months where I was doing 5, maybe 6 gym or jiu-jitsu sessions a week, and like to the expense of the growth of the business because I got so into the weeds on it. It's interesting. It's a highly addictive thing.
Yeah, that flow state, that'll get you.
It's
right. Last question is, you can go for a coffee and chat with 3 people, dead or alive. Who are you taking?
I feel like every time somebody asks this, they say like Elon Musk, and like I don't imagine Elon Musk would actually be much crack. It'd be hard to kind of grasp what's going on with him. I would love to have a conversation with Michael Jordan. That is kind of the one that has always like stood out in my head. Ken Robinson, the guy who wrote the book previously that I was talking about. And as a third one, just a bit of left field, Cillian Murphy. Just find him kind of fascinating. I don't know what it is about him. I think it's his reluctance to talk to media and stuff. I'm very intrigued about what is he actually like. He just seems so. I've seen a couple of interviews about people talking about him and saying that he is the best actor in the world but the worst celebrity. I think Emily Blunt said that, in that he's purely focused on his craft and he has no interest in any acclaim or he hates the idea of being famous, and he's so interested in his thing. I just think that's so interesting. There's something so fascinating about that I just would love to actually have a conversation.
That's a very good combo. As you think about him, as in you think about Cillian in his element of acting and being so focused on the craft. You also think of Jordan being the same, but he very much was embracing that celebrity aspect. And there's Ken probably pointing out the difference between the two. You're sitting back and enjoying it.
And that's, I've surprised myself with that selection there as a picking. I'm like, cheers, that'd be a good one. There's only Ken's the only one that has passed away, sadly. So you never know. I feel like Cillian Murphy lives in Dublin now, so maybe there's I don't know, maybe there's scope in some lifetime. God,
good stuff. Last thing is, where do you want to send people to follow you, connect you to?
The simple place is Conleth_Kaizen, Kaizen on Instagram. That is it. If you want some general useful stuff, as well as a lot of piss tech stuff about GAA managers and other sort of sketches, that's probably where to go.
Thanks for listening, and if you consider yourself an everyday athlete, whether you play sport or want to pursue other athletic goals, consider checking out the Everyday Athlete program at the link in the episode description. There you'll find what's involved in the program, testimonials from the lads we work with, and how to apply.